You see that, idiot? That's me, only 2 weeks younger, and that is a giant pile of rubbish that I had in the back of my closet. It was all of the offcuts from every sewing project that I have done since starting this YouTube channel, which I've been hoarding because I feel bad for the environment.
My solution to get rid of all of these teeny tiny fabric offcuts was to create an 18th century version of a Nightmare Before Christmas Sally dress. The only problem was that I had never made a historical dress before. So I headed to Google to find some reference photos. And I found out that when it comes to the 18th century, there are a lot of styles of dress. After being sufficiently overwhelmed, I decided that since I am not an expert on history, I should go and talk to someone who is. I don't know her.
After a little bit more research on Google and looking at some more reference photos, I finally figured out the look that I wanted to go for.
And yes, that's right, my little velociraptors. I am in fact making a mock-up for once in my life. I'm not just gonna raw dog it and pretend that I know what I'm doing. In fact, today I'm gonna try and learn how to do things properly, which means that I must have slept well this week because I actually have the ability to concentrate. I also spent 3.5 hours curling my hair. It doesn't suit me, so disappointing, but here we are. Now my goal is to get this finished by the end of the week. We will see what happens. It could very well turn out like Harley and 2 years later we revisit this video. See how I started working on the Harley Quinn dress again? So I've got 2 patterns that I'm gonna use to work out my mock-up. And this one is actually a vest pattern. I bought it from Etsy and I'll list it in the description who I bought it from. And then I'm gonna use the sleeve pattern. I feel like it was for the recycled dress video, but I don't recall putting sleeves on either of those dresses. I feel like the intent was there though at some point. And I know I said I wasn't gonna raw dog this, but like I might with the skirt. I've made this ruffle. It looks like shit, but it's meant to because it's Sally. Therefore it's meant to look, you know, like it's made of rags. The cats are really enjoying these ruffles and they're really enjoying the recurrence of the Harley Quinn dress. They love when this thing goes on the mannequin. What are you doing?
I wanted this to be a front closing dress, so to make the first mock-up and turn my vest pattern into a shirt pattern, I cut everything out onto cotton poplin. I added a split down the front center of the pattern to insert a front closure, sewed all the shoulder straps together to fit the sleeves in, and then removed the back closure. I know it's hard for you to see me doing this stuff when it's in time-lapse, but I have to say it really speeds my life up.
Hello, so it's Wednesday. I had a very productive day with my mock-up. We did some mock-up things. It was mocked. Mocking happened. I mocked myself and my skills. So do you guys remember yesterday when I said, and now a word from our sponsor. This video was brought to you by H2O's Just Add Water, now entering its 6th season on Netflix, the birthplace of Jeff Bezos. Well, it turns out that when you're combining multiple patterns together, it's actually a really good idea to make a mock-up because this like isn't awful. So, but it's not gonna fit me. I tried it on. It's too small in the boobs, it's a little too small in the waist. The general sort of like shape is exactly what I wanted and I'm pretty happy with that. It's just a bit too small. So what I'm gonna do to this pattern is I'm just gonna add an inch to pretty much every single piece of pattern, every single panel. I also think that the last time I used this pattern I added seam allowance and I didn't do that this time. I added no seam allowance. What I'm gonna do is add an inch around every single panel. My overall plan with this is I'm gonna use the final mock-up to flatline. I'm gonna flatline like 2 to 3 layers, then put the patchwork fabric on top. I have to make a few more adjustments as well because there's some stuff with grain lines in this pattern where I believe you cut the side panels on the bias, and I'm just not gonna be able to do that with my patchwork fabric that I've made because it's a mess, it's patchwork. I paid no attention to grain lines when I was sewing it together. I'll be adding a ton of boning. I'll close it all up with bias tape. And then I'm sort of following this old video from Angela Clayton, which is kind of the main inspiration for the shape of this dress. And what I want to do is copy what she did with the embroidery floss and the hand stitching that's top stitched, so everything's sort of top stitched. It looks very handmade because we're going with Sally's dress. The sort of very handmade patchwork doll kind of theme that is Sally. So that's pretty much where I'm gonna continue on with for today. I also will be working on the petticoat, and I have no idea what I'm gonna do for the skirt yet because I'm planning ahead. You know me.
Once I had tried this mock-up on, I took it apart and cut the straps at the center top so that I could add them in permanently to my second mock-up.
So I knew that this was gonna happen, like it's gonna be way too big. So I'm just sort of like taking my markers and stuff and pins and sketching a little bit of difference, and I'll pin on myself and stuff to fix it up. Once I get the mock-up right, I can move on to the real fabric.
Finally, I moved on to creating the lining of the bodice using a green sateen fabric. I marked a little bit extra for seam allowance, and then I added some flared sections to the bottom of each panel to create a slightly more exaggerated hip flare. This didn't work out perfectly, but I do think that I can revisit this in a future dress and figure it out. Now that I had an approximate shape worked out for the top, it was time to create my patchwork fabric. I didn't get that much footage of me sewing all the fabric together, so please enjoy this dramatic reenactment. To attach the lining and the front panels, I made sure to flatline the lining against 2 layers of cotton poplin. However, I think I should have flatlined the top layer because things ended up stretching. Next, I cut out the panels from the patchwork fabric, and I used a combination of thick wool and embroidery floss to add in fake stitches to make everything look a little bit more Burton-esque. I basted everything together and closed it all up with some bias tape. Look at that. Look at that. The top's nearly done. This is so exciting. The amount of serotonin running through my veins right now. For the chemise, I used this 3906 Butterick pattern in a plain cotton poplin. To make the skirt, I created 2 40x40 inch squares and gathered them. Then I attached them to a waistband, and I used an extremely messy blanket stitch with wool to tie everything together, added a button in the front, and I was done.